Hello, everyone. This is Chris Martinson of Peak Prosperity, and it is Friday, June 8th, 2018. This is your video update for this week. So, listen, I got to be completely honest. It's so hard to continue to say the same things over and over again. I don't know, and expecting a different response or something. Maybe a little insane. So, look what's happened this week. Going back 2 weeks, we had on May 29th, Italy looks like, wow, it's maybe going to default on a huge amount of bonds potentially in the future. It introduces this slight concept of risk, that risk actually exists in this world. And as we all know, risk has been banished courtesy of the central banks who, they're doing God's work and saving the system and they care about people. But actually, if you follow what's happening, all they're really doing is continuing to elevate and prop markets, which are, coincidentally, enriching themselves and all of their friends. And by themselves, I mean in the revolving door sense, right? So they leave their cushy jobs and go and harvest their rich rewards from the marketplace when they get back out there. At any rate, what's really happening is they haven't stimulated awesome, sustainable economic growth. They haven't addressed anything around resources. They haven't managed to understand anything that's happening with insects or whales or dolphins or fish or birds or anything that's happening where we see our ecosystems are clearly saying, time out, flashing red warning lights. We have to start doing something differently. So the central banks are really just the guardians of this, assuring that the pyramid, the hierarchy that's in place remains. That means that JP Morgan and Citibank and Goldman Sachs have risk-free returns in their lives. They make billions and billions of dollars. By the way, that really bothers me when you read something like JP Morgan made 6.8 billion. No, they didn't make anything. What they did was they skimmed, they front ran, they cheated, they lied, they stole, they did all kinds of stuff, but they didn't make anything. I defy you. Go around your house right now, find me one thing that says made by JP Morgan on it. Again, you won't, right? But still, you go all across the world. You know what you're going to find in Shanghai, Hong Kong, Dubai, Mumbai, anywhere you go, it doesn't matter. You know what the tallest, biggest buildings are? They're all bankers' buildings. We've grown up, you and I, we've grown up in a world of financialization. So it's everything. So I understand if you've grown up in financializations and everything, you're going to defend the market. So May 29th, Italy sort of broken. And the next thing you know, what we're seeing is tumbling everything. It got fixed by 2:30 that same afternoon. Everything, not, I would say U-turned is a too gentle of a term, nipple bottomed and off it went, right? Because somebody was rescuing those markets. And what have we seen every single day since then is just up markets. So that's great. So we have this bright, shiny bauble called, hey, the stock market's up, which is supposed to signal to you that everything's okay. And because everything's okay, maybe you'll buy that Ford, SUV next, which is a good thing because that's all they're selling in the United States is going forward. They've decided to scrap the whole sedan concept because, hey, shale oil. I mean, this is just so ludicrous, people. So that's why what I wrote this week, which normally would be a two-parter, which half would be out in the public and half would be to my subscribers, I wrote a piece this week which is very important to me. And I hope you read it. Because what it's really talking about is what I do is I use an example from a movie I watched called Grief Walker with Stephen Jenkinson. By the way, one of the favorite podcasts of all time I've ever done with anybody is with Stephen Jenkinson. It was a year ago. Anyway, he was in this movie Grief Walker, and I used the context of that movie to sort of cast all of humanity forward into the year 2040 and then ask, how do we feel when we get there? Because just extrapolating current trends linearly, and by the way, they might not be linear, they might be exponential in the wrong way. How will we feel when we get there and there's no dawn chorus and the birds aren't singing because they're gone, or the insects are mostly gone? Maybe cockroaches and ants and other durable species, but no swallowtails, no mayflies, things like that. And how will we feel when all the megafauna is gone? And by the way, the ocean is flipped to a jellyfish ecology away from sort of, say, vertebrates, mammals, fish, birds, and stuff like that. So that's what that piece looks like at this point in time. And that's not just sort of to club everybody and say, wow, we're going to have huge regrets in 2040, which is possible. But it's to do that Ichabod, Ebenezer Scrooge. Good, Ichabod Crane, that's Headless Horseman. Ebenezer Scrooge, where we get to cast forward into the future, see it, come back to today and say, what would we, could we, should we be doing differently? And so that's the nature of this piece. Comes from my heart. This is where I find a lot of my personal grief. I watch markets and I'm really disappointed that, the authorities, all they can think to do is just make them go higher and higher and higher because that's all they know how to do. Bless them, but God, they're misguided. Meanwhile, the real world is calling for our real selves to come out. And one of the things that we have to fight all the time when Adam and I do our Peak Prosperity seminars, one of the key things, number one, that shows up for people is this. They say, I feel isolated. I feel alone. And in many cases you are, because for whatever reason, and I don't know if this is just as true today as it was in the times of ancient Greek philosophers, but for whatever, maybe, the whole Cassandra story, but for whatever reason, talking about reality as it exists is never a really popular thing to do. And you might get a lot of pushback from it, and you might lose friends. You might lose family. So that sense of isolation, that's something we talk about head on, and something that there are a lot of tools to get around. And Adam wrote a really nice piece this week as well. So we have that going on. And then we're also going to have this amazing podcast coming out this week with Roni Sturfli out of Liechtenstein, who's talking about this amazing gold report that he wrote, his firm wrote, and he was one of the lead authors on. So that's kind of the content that's going on. And of course, like everything at Peak Prosperity, it's all across the spectrum, right? Everything from how do you protect your individual wealth to these big sort of existential things that say, look, this is really time to, we have to make actions here, to either have your movement or get off the pot. Yeah. So, that's where we are. So that's what's been capturing me. And you know what? This morning I set out to write a completely different piece. I had charts. I had emerging market stuff. Argentina's melting down, IMF bailouts, all that stuff. But my heart said I have to talk about something which is very real, which is I can feel a profound moment of regret in the future. And that regret comes in the form of, can you imagine that day you walk into a museum and you've got your dodo birds and your passenger pigeons and your Luna moths and the American robin, all sort of displayed as things that used to exist. That's the direction we're heading. By the way, still lots we can do about that. So, hey, please stop by Peak Prosperity and check out the conversation. We made this one wide open. This is really important because what it's speaking to is we need a movement. And what's a movement? It's the right idea at the right time with the right people. So I'm hoping the time is right. We're debating the ideas, and you are the people to join. So that's what we got going on this week. I will sign off here, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.